I am 63 years old today. I sit in a professional studio, the kind they use for documentaries about people who have survived great wars or natural disasters. But the war I survived didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened behind the polished oak doors of a $4 million estate in the Connecticut Gold Coast. My hair is fully gray now, a stark, snowy white that people often call graceful. They assume it is the natural consequence of 6 decades of living. But this white, it didn't come from the passing of seasons. It came in a single night when I was 25 years old. It came from a night where the sky didn't just rain. It bled rivers of blackened blood from the clouds. If you are a young woman holding a diamond ring, or if you are a wife who feels like she is walking on eggshells in her own living room, I need you to listen. I am Haven. And for 10 years, I lived in a house that was a masterpiece of hollow perfection. A house that looked like a palace but felt like a grave with a TV. This is the bitter truth I learned too late. Marriage doesn't fail. People do. When I met Yusuf, he was the man the world admired. He was a senior partner at a top-tier law firm, a respected pillar of the community, who funded domestic violence prevention programs and sat on the boards of elite charities. He was a public saint. He bought me a Lexus LS 400, the 1990 model year that signaled sensible luxury, and filled my closet with St. John knits and Escada suits. From the outside, we were the American dream. We shopped at Balducci's for gourmet groceries and spent our weekends at country club social rituals where the air was thick with the scent of chintz and expensive tradition. But the saint had a shadow. Inside our home, he was a private tyrant. He didn't use a fist. He used power as an external corrective for his own internal deficiency. He believed that his happiness depended entirely on altering the world around him, remaking me and our children into extensions of his own ego. I lived in a claustrophobic vacuum, a sterile box where dreams went to be archived rather than lived. We had been married for 2 years. I was 25, brimming with human sympathy and the belief that the world was essentially a safe place. Yusuf was in another city for a business trip. A storm moved in, a prairies-like storm that rattled the bones of our modern house. The lightning captured frozen shots of the yard, and the rain swept across the grass verges in a deluge that made it impossible to see. Then a knock at the door. A man stood there, drenched. He looked desperate. He used the 7 survival signals identified by security specialists, though I didn't know it then. He used charm and niceness to disarm my mistrust. He used force teaming, saying, "We don't need to talk out here in this rain, ma'am." He gave too many details, weaving a long story about a stalled car and a wife waiting for him, hoping his over-explanation would buy my credibility. I ignored the quiet wind chime of my intuition. I let politeness get in the way of self-preservation. I opened the door to the devil, thinking I was being a good person. I gave him tea. I watched the steam rise. And then the transition happened. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a guest until he saw my kindness as a weakness to be exploited. He abused the very humanity I offered him. He raped me in the house that was supposed to be my sanctuary. When Yusuf returned, I expected a rescue. I expected his love to be the gold that would mend my broken pieces. The art of kintsugi. Instead, I met the clinical anatomy of victim blaming. Yusuf looked at me with patronizing and contemptuous eyes. He didn't see my trauma. He saw a threat to his perfect image. Why was the door unlocked, Haven? Why did you let an unknown man in without my permission? In his mind, he was practicing defensive attribution. To keep his own world feeling safe, he had to believe I was responsible for my own harm. If I was innocent, then the world was dangerous, and he was vulnerable too. So he blamed my naivety. He blamed my character. This was the start of my 10-year prison. The physical assault lasted hours, but the secondary victimization from my own husband lasted a decade. He didn't leave me, but he enacted a silent divorce. We shared a roof, a name, and a mortgage, but we were strangers under the same weeping concrete. As the years passed, the slow poison of gaslighting intensified. Yusuf used concern like a scalpel. "You're too flighty lately, Haven. You're losing your grip on the details." He would say when I remembered a conversation differently than he did. He turned my mind into a sieve. Then came the financial leash. Even though he made 7 figures, he restricted my access to wealth as a strategy of domination. He gave me a weekly allowance for groceries and Zoya's lessons, forcing me to justify every receipt. He called it protecting me from my emotional spending. This is the weaponization of access, a core feature of economic abuse in wealthy homes. Statistics show that women in these high-status traps face a 4.89 times higher risk of diagnosed mental health conditions. I was living in a $4 million prison where I had to ask permission to buy a book or a pair of shoes. He had taken my agency and used it to nurture my oppression. The turning point didn't happen because of a fight with Yusuf. It happened because of my children. In high-status domestic tragedies, children often become symptom bearers of the home's toxicity. My son, Leo, was 14. I asked him to put away his laundry, and for the first time, he looked at me with Yusuf's exact expression. Dad says you only nag because you have nothing real to do with your life. He says we have to manage you because you're hysterical. In that moment, I saw the mirroring. My son was absorbing a curriculum of abuse. He was learning that women are accessories or furniture to be belittled. My daughter, Zoya, was becoming the ghost, disappearing into the floral chintz wallpaper of our home to avoid the nonverbal anger and stonewalling that had become our normal. I realized that my patience wasn't protecting them. It was training them for their own future tragedies. I was keeping the war instead of keeping the peace. I spent 10 years in that prison before I walked away. Today, at 63, I delivered this advice to the woman looking in her own mirror. Do not mistake Zulm, oppression, for Sabar, patience. In our communities, we are often told to just have Sabar when things are difficult. But Sabar is not passivity. It is active persistence and standing firm upon righteousness. It does not mean staying in a relationship that erodes your soul. Enduring abuse and pain is not a virtue. It is an injustice against yourself. Justice is not just the absence of a punch. It is the presence of opportunity and the elimination of barriers to your potential. A marriage without respect is not a relationship. It is a long-term funeral. I am no longer the curator of a museum of hollow perfection. I left the weeping concrete and the equidistant forks. I am taking my reality back. I am choosing a new dawn, a new commitment, a new life. Read this before you say, I do. Your self-worth is not a negotiation. Your dignity is not a commodity to be traded for privacy. It is never too late to stop being a symptom and start being a human being again.